Good morning. It is Sunday, January the 3rd of 2021. This past week, I've been thinking quite a bit about motivation. And the reason that I was thinking a lot about motivation was, last week I played 15 games of racquetball and/or handball. I think I played 5 games of racquetball and 10 games of handball. And I won, out of those 15 games, I won 1 game. And I usually play on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And every Monday and Wednesday and Friday, while I'm playing, and then after it's over, I keep asking myself, why am I doing this? And the answer that I come up with is because I need the exercise. And there's a reason that when I film these videos, you can really only see me from about the chest up, because unfortunately my waist is getting bigger instead of smaller, because I'll go burn off 1,000, 1,500 calories playing racquetball and handball, and then I'll go eat 2,000 calories for lunch and then wonder why I'm not losing any weight. But anyway, so I've been thinking a lot about motivation. I mean, I enjoy playing racquetball and I enjoy playing handball. Not all that good at it, obviously, with a record of 1 win and 14 losses this past week, but I enjoy it. It keeps me relatively healthy. And so as I thought more about motivation, my mind turned to the Israelites. And in part that's because I'm going to begin teaching a Wednesday night class on Old Testament history. And I will freely admit I've never been a big fan of history. That just wasn't my thing in high school and in college growing up. I was more attracted to biology and chemistry and the sciences than I was in history. But I've become to have a better appreciation for history, because it does explain to us in part why people do what they did. And so motivation. And if you look back through the scriptures and read and think about why people did what they did, sometimes we're left scratching our head. You think about Noah. Noah found favor in the eyes of God, and so God saved Noah and Noah's wife and Noah's 3 sons and their wives from the flood. Destroyed everybody else, killed every other human being on the face of the earth except for these 8 individuals. And as soon as the water dried up and the ark landed and Noah and his family was able to get out and plant a crop, and after the first crop of grapes, Noah gets drunk and lays down exposed to his children. And you just want to think, Noah, God just saved you from a worldwide flood, and you get drunk as soon as you can? You think about the Israelites. They had been slaves for about 400 years to the Egyptians, and then God delivers them through the hand of Moses. He parts the Red Sea, and the Israelites walk across the Red Sea on dry land. And then they watch as the waters of the Red Sea come back together and destroy the Egyptian army. And then a few days later, they are out there, the Israelites are out there griping and moaning and complaining because they're hungry and they're thirsty and they just don't think that God can take care of them. And some of them said, it would have been better off if we had just stayed in Egypt as slaves. At least we had food and water. And one is puzzled by that. Why would they start griping and complaining? God had just delivered them. God had just freed them from slavery. And they start whining and griping and complaining. And so eventually they get to the promised land, and they send the 12 spies over, and the 12 spies come back, and they all agree that it's a beautiful land flowing with milk and honey, just like God had said. But 10 of them were going, well, yes, it's a nice place, and it'd be great to live there, but the people are mighty, and there's no way we can defeat these people, even with God's help. And so God punishes them, and so they wander there in the wilderness for about 40 years. And they finally get into the promised land, and they finally defeat most, but not all of their enemies as God has instructed them. And then we read, then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked, who had obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did not do so. Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and he saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. And so time and time again, they would go after other gods and start serving them, and eventually would be oppressed, and they would groan, and the Lord would have pity on them, and he would raise up a judge who would deliver them. But as soon as that judge died, they went back to their old evil ways time and time and time again. And one wants to wonder, why? Why did they keep going back and worshiping these idols and these false gods instead of being faithful to the God who cares for them? And then I was reminded of the Apostle Paul's letter to the saints in Rome. And after talking about how God loved them and how God had taken care of their ancestors, he says to them, he writes to them, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Now notice what he says. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God. It's interesting to me what moves people to do what they do, to think what they think, to behave like they behave. And there have been times that I have appealed to my adult children, saying, listen to me, I'm your father, and I have lived 30 years longer than you have. Just the fact that I have lived 30 years longer than you have means that I know a little bit more about life than you do because of my experiences. And listen to that experience. We appeal to people on the basis of our experience. We appeal to people on the basis of our knowledge. We appeal to people on the basis of our position. I'm your boss. And I'm telling you as your boss, you need to do this. I'm your father. I'm your husband. I'm your wife. We appeal to people upon various things to behave or to think in a certain way. And the Apostle Paul says, I appeal to you by the mercies of God. We've all experienced the mercy of God. And not just once. I dare say I'm not the only one who has enjoyed the mercy of God more than one time in my life. And Paul says, I'm appealing to you. I'm appealing to my fellow saints in Rome. I'm appealing to you on the basis of the mercies of God to present your body as a living sacrifice. What Paul is telling these individuals to do is to put aside what they want to do with, quote, their life. And based upon God's mercy, to become a sacrifice to God, a living sacrifice to God. One which is holy, one which has been set apart to do God's will. One which is acceptable to God. Mercy, love, kindness, goodness, patience are all wonderful motivators. And Paul begs his saints, because of the mercy that God has shown them, to change their behavior, to change their way of thinking. And as he writes a little bit later, to be transformed by the renewal of their mind. Quit thinking the way the world thinks. Because of God's mercy, change the way that you're thinking. Renew your mind to think, what can I do to show God that I love Him and that I'm grateful for His mercy? So as we enter into this new year, let me encourage all of us to examine why we're doing what we do, why we think the way that we think, why we behave the way we behave. We should be living the way we are, and we should be thinking the way we are, based upon, in part, as the Apostle Paul says, the mercies of God. I pray you'll have a great week.